Hello, everyone. My name is MJ, and this is my channel called Reading This Life. At my channel, we talk fiction, friends, and fun. And most of the time on Tuesdays, we do tags. Today, we are doing something completely different. Welcome to Top 10 Tuesday. Okay, so I've been on BookTube a little bit over a year. I'd say a year and 4 months perhaps. And I don't think I've ever done a top 10. And I know they're popular. I know they go around. And I thought I would do something completely different, a little outside of the norm. I have noticed that I gravitate to some autobiographies. And what I'd like to do is go through my favorites in no particular order. I should preface that these books are mostly pop culture icons. There's no historical icons. It's mostly things that I would gravitate to reading for a nonfiction autobiography, and these were my most recent faves. You're going to see flavorings as to who I am as a reader with my picks, but I chose all of these books, and they're all pretty fantastic. Okay, so we are going to go through this list in no particular order. These are not ranked because each has some type of individual quality to it. I'm just going to list them to most recently read to earliest read. So the most recent autobiography that I read is by Pamela Anderson, and it is entitled Love, Pamela. This book came out January 31st of this year. It's a short autobiography, but it is jam-packed. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. There are trigger warnings for abuse, sexual abuse, animal welfare. She goes through all of it, from when she was a small child to when she was discovered, to her days on Baywatch, to her time at the Playboy Mansion, meeting Tommy Lee, marrying Tommy Lee, that whole thing, the tape, her other relationships, raising her sons in Hollywood. You know, I thought it was very well done. It has a vibe that reads like a diary entry. I found it to be entertaining. I found it to be gripping. It held my interest, and I wanted to know more. There is a lot to Pamela Anderson than just, what the camera picks up. So if you're looking for something a little flirty, a little serious, if you want to peel back the Hollywood curtain, this might be a good pick for you. Next up is Spare by Prince Harry. I was on a wait list for this book from the library for quite a while. I think I was number 45 in line. I wasn't sure. I kind of knew what to expect, but I wasn't sure what to expect based on the media, the press releases, the leaks, etc. What I got was something completely different than I thought I was going to get. I got a story of a young man who struggled with growing up royal. Who struggled with the reality of his mother's death, who struggles with issues of the paparazzi, who struggles with trust issues with the media, with newspapers, with people planting stories, people reporting stories. A deep dive into his time with the military. I would say at least 25% of this book is dedicated to his time in the military. His relationship with his grandmother, his relationship with his father, his failed loves, meeting his current wife, their struggles. It was thoroughly enjoyable. I had empathy for him. It really, really did make me see Prince Harry in another light. And, I'm not quite sure how people are taking the book over in the UK and other British territories, but it's well received here, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was entertaining, and the little snippets of history that he gives is just fascinating. So if you're into any of that, then you really might enjoy Spare. Give it a try. Then I read Yours Cruelly, Elvira Mistress of the Dark. It's Elvira, people. I had no clue as to what I was getting into when I was reading this. So she has so many layers. She has such a history. Did you know that she was a Vegas showgirl? Did you know that she had entanglements with Elvis Presley and Tom Jones and a lot of others, including Jimmy Page? It was delightful. She talks about her experience as Elvira pretty much a little bit later in the book. She talks about her love of B-horror movies. She talks about her growing up, her relationships, her marriage. She talks about trying to make it in Hollywood. Very surprising. There are so many stories. This book has the tea. This book has the gossip, and she is not holding back. She is naming names. So if you enjoyed Elvira, I think she's 70 now, which is crazy to me. But if you enjoy her character, if you want to know what makes her character tick, then I absolutely would recommend Yours Cruelly, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I gave this autobiography 5 stars because it was so absolutely amazing to me, and it was a pleasure to consume. Next, previous to that, I read No Filter, The Good, the Bad, and the Beautiful by model Paulina Porizkova. Paulina Porizkova was an icon of mine when I was in high school. I was hugely influenced by fashion and fashion models. I wanted to be a model desperately when I was younger. And every month I would get a copy of Vogue. I would get a copy of Bazaar. I would get a copy of the New York Times Style Edition magazine that would come out twice a year. And always Estee Lauder had the first 2 pages, and her campaign would be there. And I would rip it out and I would tape it up onto my wall. Her story was amazing. She talks about growing up. She talks about being discovered, working in the modeling industry, the stuff she had to endure in the modeling industry, how she met her husband, the late Rick Ocasek, their relationship, his passing, what happened after he passed, the grief that she endured. Her story is extremely, extremely powerful. She talks about aging. She talks about aging gracefully. She talks about the beauty industry, the double standards that we face. This book is done with grace, with poise, with humor. She talks about the love of her family. I just gobbled this one up. It was one of those where I didn't know it was coming out, and then it came out, and as soon as I saw it, I put a hold on it. I absolutely loved it. This book I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Her story is so powerful. So if you are a woman of my age, which is 51, if you love fashion, if you want to get in it, if you're a fan of the cars, this book may be for you. I highly recommend No Filter, The Good, the Bad, and the Beautiful by Paulina Porizkova. Okay, then prior to that, the autobiography that I read was Walking with Ghosts by actor Gabriel Byrne. Gabriel Byrne is a favorite of mine. I don't know what it is about him, but just that cool Irish, I don't know, something about it just gets to my DNA. This book I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Gabriel Byrne is quite the actor. And in the book, he also does some vocalizations of the people that he's speaking about in his life. He goes through, growing up in Ireland. He talks about getting involved in acting, going through the movie industry, talking about the different facets of religion. The stories that he tells are actually really funny at times, but then they're also kind of heartbreaking. But this was thoroughly entertaining. It is narrated by the author. All of these so far are narrated by the author. And I kind of prefer that, don't you? But if you're looking for something different, if you like his work in movies, then check it out. I highly recommend it. Worth a read or a listen. Next up, Dave Grohl, The Storyteller. This was one of the first books that I reviewed on BookTube. And I love this. I did the audiobook for this. Dave Grohl talks about his growing up in Virginia, D.C. area, talks about his former bands before joining Nirvana, talks about Nirvana and how that all came about, talks about the relationship he has with his bandmates, going on tour, the record industry. He touches briefly on what happened to Kurt. He doesn't get into a lot of it, probably for personal reasons, and we all know what happened. He talks about the Foo Fighters and how that all came about. Talks about his family, his friendships, his children. And it was just thoroughly entertaining. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. And that's Dave Grohl, the storyteller. Tales of life and music. And hearing him fangirl about people that he met is just, it's wonderful. I think there's a really great passage of him hanging out with Paul McCartney. So I hope you enjoy it. This one was good. I read this one a while back. This is Brat, an 80s story by Andrew McCarthy. If you're like me, you know exactly who Andrew McCarthy is. This was, oh God, it won a Goodreads Choice Award. I gave this one 3.5 stars. We know him from the John Hughes movies, St. Elmo's Fire, Less Than Zero, Pretty in Pink. And he talks about growing up in that era. He talks about his family. He talks about acting. It's been a minute since I read this. When did I read this? Okay, so I read this the end of May, beginning of June of 2021. It was enjoyable, I can tell you that. So did you know that Andrew McCarthy had a biography? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he touches on the Brat Pack. Not a lot of it. He doesn't get heavy into, he does touch on his experiences with the Brat Pack, but it's more of who he is in a person, and who he is now, which is it's always wonderful to see a progression in an individual's life as to who they were and who they become. So if you are Gen X, you may enjoy Brat, an 80s story by Andrew McCarthy. This is for my fitness people out there. Rich Froning is like a legend in the CrossFit industry as an athlete. This is his autobiography, which is called First, What It Takes to Win. And it talks about how, basically growing up on a farm, I believe he was trained to be a firefighter, if I remember correctly. This was published back in 2013, and I read it back in 2021. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. He is very dedicated. He is extremely faith-based. He does everything, with his faith and his religion in mind. He talks about his family. He talks about his wife. He talks about, meeting those physical goals, which honestly seem to come kind of naturally to him, which is mind-blowing. So if you have an athletic backbone, or if you're looking to see how to get some fitspiration or motivation into your life, then you may want to check out First, What It Takes to Win by Rich Froning. And he is, I believe, the competitor that has won the most CrossFit titles since the sport's inception. And he still competes on a team level, and it's crazy. Like, he's almost 40, I think, or maybe he's over 40. But yeah, super fit. He's cute too. The Heroin Diaries. This is Nikki Sixx. So if you like Motley Crue, if you like 80s rock, if you like heavy metal, and you want to get a glimpse as to what it's like to be a rock and roller, The Heroin Diaries might be for you. This is authored by Nikki Sixx, and it has a journal entry type of feel. And the power that substances can have in someone's life is extreme at times. And he is very forthcoming with his addiction. He is very forthcoming with his experiences. And he does not hold back. He does not hold back at all. And it's a fascinating read. It's a short read. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The actual title is The Heroin Diaries, A Year in the Life of a Shattered Rock Star. And it is good. I've always been a fan of Nikki Sixx, so I forgot that he had that book out, and that came out when? That came out in 2007. It just popped up somewhere, and I was like, oh, I wonder if the library has it. So I actually was able to take it out of the library. Highly entertaining. I believe there was a movie that Netflix put out that pulled, you can see some of the entries in documentary that Netflix put out. But really, really enjoyable. If you're looking for an autobiography that is not boring at all, that's a little shocking, then definitely Nikki Sixx is the one for you. Next, we're going to talk about one of my first boyfriends, and this is John Taylor, his autobiography. John Taylor is a member of the band Duran, and I didn't get a chance to meet him when he was doing his book tour for this book, but a friend of mine that lives in New Jersey went to go see him at a bookstore and got a copy signed for me and had it shipped over to me. And it's very, very good. If you are a fan of new romantic music, 80s new wave, the second British invasion, influenced by Bowie, influenced by Roxy music, there is a ton of music in this book. Talks about his influences, talks about growing up in England, talks about the relationship he's had with his parents, and talks about him trying to find his way as a nerdy kid, trying to find his way in life, trying to, he just had that goal of being a rock star and what it took for him to get there. And also the pitfalls regarding relationships, regarding substances, and how he's been able to turn it around. And the band is still on tour. I'm going to be seeing them pretty soon. They're doing a major tour this year after being inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is well deserved. The book is called In the Pleasure Groove: Love, Death, and Duran. Check it out if you are a Duranie like me, or if you are interested in anything 80s. The last book that I had is for anyone that is interested in Bravo culture. What I mean is housewives culture. And this is the autobiography by Dorinda Medley, housewife of New York City. And her autobiography is called Make It Nice. Dorinda is a very multi-layered individual. She is fascinating. I gobbled this book up in like a day or two. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. And it talks about her beginnings and the relationship she's had with her husband, with her daughter, with being on the show, her homes, her travel. Just fascinating. I'll read you the quote because it's been a while since I read it. It's a vulnerable and emotional account of love, motherhood, loss, and the not entirely planned adventure from her modest beginnings in the Berkshires to her personal, social, and professional ascent told in her trademark manner. She is one of my favorite cast members on The Real Housewives of New York. And if you are a fan of the show and you haven't read her autobiography, you are doing yourself a big disservice. Make sure that you check it out. Okay, everyone, so that is it here for me. Those are my top 10 picks for autobiographies of popular culture, pop culture icons, maybe. Yeah, pop culture icons. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed my content, consider subscribing. All right, everyone, that is it here from me. I will see you in my next video, whether it be sooner or later. So until next time, goodbye for now.